Have you ever wondered what events shaped human civilizations all the way from ancient to modern times? Today we're going to explore the top 10 most important events in history, from the rise and fall of civilizations to the breakthroughs that redefined what it means to be human. We'll be unpacking the stories behind the headlines, the human dramas behind the dates, and the enduring legacies of these pivotal moments. So, buckle up, history students and casual learners alike. We're going to encounter emperors and inventors, revolutions and revelations in this epic countdown of the top 10 most important events in history. Let's get started. Rome. When you think of empires, of legacies that echo through millennia, you can't help but think of the Roman Empire. For centuries, it stood as a beacon of power, of innovation, of a civilization that seemed destined to rule for, well, ever. But as we all know, all empires, even those built on legions and aqueducts, must eventually face their twilight. The Roman Empire, at its peak, controlled a territory so vast, so culturally diverse, that it stretched from the misty shores of Britain to the sun-drenched sands of North Africa. This sprawling empire, with its intricate network of roads, its impressive architectural feats and its complex legal system, seemed invincible, an unstoppable force in the ancient world. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly unshakable power, cracks were beginning to appear, fissures that would eventually bring the mighty empire to its knees. Over time, a toxic cocktail of internal strife, economic instability, and relentless pressure from those outside its borders began to weaken the empire's foundations. Ambitious generals vying for power, a series of incompetent emperors, and the ever-present threat of barbarian invasions all chipped away at the once mighty empire, pushing it closer to the brink. It's important to remember that the fall of Rome wasn't a single dramatic event, but rather a slow, drawn-out process, a gradual decline that unfolded over centuries. Think of it less like a tree felled by a single axe blow, and more like one slowly succumbing to disease and decay, its branches withering, its roots weakening, until it finally collapsed under its own weight. Imagine a world where books are a luxury, where knowledge is handwritten, painstakingly copied by scribes, and access to information is controlled by a select few. This was the reality for much of human history before the 15th century, a time when the written word was a precious commodity, jealously guarded and painstakingly reproduced. In this world, the spread of ideas was a slow and arduous process, often limited to the elite circles of scholars, clergy, and the wealthy. Books, primarily religious texts and scholarly treatises, were rare and expensive, often taking years to copy by hand. Knowledge, therefore, remained largely confined within the walls of monasteries and universities, its flow restricted by the sheer physical limitations of handwritten manuscripts. But whispers of a revolution were in the air, a revolution that would democratize knowledge, challenge the established order, and ignite the flames of intellectual curiosity across Europe and beyond. The invention of the printing press, a seemingly simple mechanical innovation, would have consequences as profound as the invention of writing itself. In the mid-15th century, in the bustling German city of Mainz, a goldsmith named Johannes Gutenberg combined existing technologies, the screw press, movable type, and oil-based inks, to create a printing system that would change the world forever. Gutenberg's printing press, with its ability to produce multiple copies of text quickly and efficiently, unleashed a torrent of printed material, making books more affordable and accessible to a wider audience than ever before. So, the American Revolution. Yeah, that whole thing where a bunch of British colonists decided they'd rather wear homespun clothes and drink lukewarm tea than pay taxes to a king across the ocean. It all started with this idea, right? This radical notion of no taxation without representation. The colonists, they were pretty clear about it. If they were going to pay taxes, they wanted a say in how those taxes were spent. Seems reasonable, right? Well, to King George III and the British Parliament, not so much. See, the British, they were used to running things their way. They had this whole empire thing going on, and they figured the colonies were just there to make them money. But the colonists, they saw things differently. They were tired of being treated like second-class citizens, tired of being told what to do by a government that didn't represent them. And so, fueled by revolutionary fervor and possibly a bit too much lukewarm tea, they decided to take a stand. And let me tell you, that stand involved a lot of muskets, a surprising amount of pamphleteering, and at least one very famous declaration. Okay, so imagine a world without cars, without electricity, without smartphones. A world where most people lived and worked on farms, where the pace of life was slow and the most advanced technology you might encounter was a really efficient plow. That was life before the Industrial Revolution, then bam, starting in the late 18th century, a wave of technological innovation swept across Europe and North America, transforming societies and reshaping the world in ways that are still felt today. We're talking about the mechanization of production, the rise of factories, the steam engine, the cotton gin, the power loom, inventions that changed everything. People flocked from rural areas to cities in search of work in the new factories. The way goods were produced changed dramatically, with machines replacing hand labor and mass production becoming the norm. And while this led to an explosion of economic growth and the availability of goods, it also created a whole new set of challenges. Working conditions in factories were often harsh and dangerous, child labor was rampant, and the gap between the wealthy factory owners and the working class grew wider. The Industrial Revolution was a time of immense change, both for better and for worse. Alright, let's talk about the World Wars. And yeah, the name is pretty self-explanatory. Twice in the first half of the 20th century, the world descended into global conflict on a scale never seen before. These weren't just wars between countries, but massive clashes of ideologies, empires, and technologies that fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape. World War I, sparked by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914, pitted the Central Powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary, against the Allied powers, primarily France, Britain, Russia, and eventually the United States. It was a war characterized by trench warfare, horrific casualties, and the use of new and terrifying weapons like poison gas and machine guns. World War II, ignited by Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939, was even more devastating. Fought on a truly global scale, with battles raging across Europe, Asia, and Africa, it involved the Axis powers, led by Germany, Japan, and Italy, against the Allies, led by Britain, the United States, the Soviet Union, and others. The horrors of the Holocaust, the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. World War II pushed humanity to the brink, leaving millions dead and entire continents in ruins. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our countdown of the top 10 most important events in history. Today we're blasting off to 1969, a year that cemented its place in history with a single footprint. We're talking, of course, about the Apollo 11 mission, the event that marked the end of a heated space race and the beginning of a new era of human exploration. The space race itself was a product of the Cold War, a period of intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both superpowers were vying for technological and ideological dominance, and space exploration became a powerful symbol of their competition. Think about it. Landing a man on the moon wasn't just about scientific advancement, it was about proving which system, capitalism or communism, was superior. The Soviets initially took the lead, launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, in 1957. This event sent shockwaves through the US, sparking fears of Soviet technological superiority and igniting the space race in earnest. The US quickly established NASA and poured resources into catching up, leading to a period of rapid advancement in rocketry, materials, science, and communications technology. The race to the moon was on, and it wasn't just about bragging rights. It represented humanity's insatiable curiosity, our drive to push the boundaries of what's possible. It captured the imaginations of millions around the world, becoming a defining moment of the 20th century. From the lunar landscape, we shift our focus back to Earth, where a different kind of history was being made. This time, it wasn't a giant leap for mankind, but rather a collective sigh of relief as a physical and ideological barrier crumbled. That's right, we're talking about the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, an event that signaled the beginning of the end for the Cold War. For almost 3 decades, the Berlin Wall had stood as a potent symbol of division and oppression. It sliced through the heart of Berlin, separating families, friends, and even lovers. It became a physical manifestation of the Iron Curtain, the ideological divide that separated the capitalist West from the communist East. Life in the shadow of the wall was a stark reality for millions. East Germans faced constant surveillance, limited freedom of movement, and economic hardship. The wall itself was heavily guarded, and attempts to cross it were met with deadly force. But as the 1980s wore on, the tide began to turn. Economic stagnation, political repression, and a growing desire for freedom fueled protests across the Eastern Bloc. In Poland, the Solidarity movement gained momentum, challenging communist rule. In Hungary, the border with Austria was opened, allowing East Germans to escape to the west. Okay, so we've talked about giant leaps and crumbling walls, but now we're diving into something that's arguably even more impactful: the internet revolution. You see, while sending humans to the moon was a monumental achievement, the internet has fundamentally transformed the way we live, work, and interact with the world around us. This digital revolution didn't happen overnight, it evolved gradually, from its humble beginnings as a network for researchers and academics to the ubiquitous force it is today. We can trace its roots back to the 1960s with the development of ARPANET, a project funded by the US Department of Defense. But the internet as we know it began to take shape in the 1990s with the invention of the World Wide Web. Suddenly, this complex network became accessible to the masses, thanks to user-friendly interfaces and the rise of personal computers. Remember dial-up modems and that glorious sound? Yeah, that was the sound of the future connecting. The early internet was a wild west of innovation and experimentation. It was a place where anyone with a modem and a dream could build a website, share their ideas, and connect with people from all walks of life. It was exciting, chaotic, and full of potential. Okay, so picture this. It's 1928, and Scottish scientist Alexander Fleming is hard at work in his lab, which, let's be honest, was probably a bit messier than the ones we see on TV. We're talking petri dishes everywhere, maybe a forgotten sandwich. You get the idea. Fleming was known for being a bit, shall we say, relaxed when it came to tidiness. Anyway, Fleming returns from a much-needed vacation, and as he's sifting through his lab, he notices something peculiar in one of his petri dishes. There, amidst a colony of Staphylococcus bacteria, was a strange mold growing. But here's the kicker: the area around the mold was clear, completely free of the bacteria. This, my friends, was no ordinary mold. This was penicillin, a substance secreted by the mold that could kill bacteria. Fleming's discovery, though initially met with skepticism, would revolutionize medicine and change the course of history. It's like finding the secret to eternal life in your sock drawer, except instead of eternal life, it's a cure for deadly infections. But here's the thing about penicillin: it wasn't a magic bullet right away. Fleming's initial attempts to isolate and purify the penicillin were met with limited success. It wasn't until the late 1930s, with the work of Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and a team of dedicated researchers, that penicillin could be produced in usable quantities. Alright, so we're going to talk about something that feels, well, a bit too soon, but it's undeniably one of the most significant events of recent history: the COVID-19 pandemic. It's like the plot of a dystopian movie, except it's real life and there's no fast-forward button. In late 2019, a novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, emerged in Wuhan, China, quickly spreading across the globe and throwing the world into a state of unprecedented uncertainty. Remember those early days? Empty grocery store shelves, the constant hand-washing, the frantic search for toilet paper. It felt like the world had been flipped on its head. The pandemic forced us to confront our mortality, our interconnectedness, and the fragility of our systems. Schools and businesses shut down, travel came to a standstill, and social gatherings were replaced by Zoom calls and virtual happy hours. It was, to put it mildly, a major adjustment. But, amidst the fear and uncertainty, we also witnessed incredible acts of resilience, compassion, and innovation. Healthcare workers risked their lives on the front lines, scientists raced to develop vaccines in record time, and communities came together to support those in need. It was a stark reminder that even in the darkest of times, humanity can shine through. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our whirlwind journey through history. We've covered a lot of ground, from the fall of empires to the rise of pandemics, from the invention of the printing press to the interconnected world of the internet. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? But remember, history isn't just a bunch of dates and names in a textbook. It's the story of us, of humanity, in all its messy, complicated, and often awe-inspiring glory. It's a story that's still being written, and we're all a part of it. So go out there, learn from the past, embrace the present, and help shape the future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on more epic history content. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, history is happening right now. See you next time.